Let's have a conversation about whether or not sociopaths regret losing you. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I've been counseling women and men for many years who have experienced abuse, as well as those who have been perpetrators of abuse and other violent crimes. A commenter writes, Hi, can a sociopath regret losing you, especially if the woman was good to them? Do they miss others or have any kind of emotions at all? Okay, so I wanted to have a conversation, and I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit before. When you think about sociopaths, people with antisocial personality disorder, um, it's my professional opinion in working with them for many years. My professional opinion is that um, they miss what you did for them. So they may miss the stability you provided for them, the structure that you provided for them, the good food, the nurturing and safety and things like that. They typically miss the resource that you were for them, but they don't miss in the way in terms of like having empathy. Like an empathetic person would miss a person, right? That sort of longing for that person and that deep connection that they had. It's more or less, I miss what you did for me. I miss you being a fool or sucker for me. I miss everything that you did for me. And so there could be some regrets about the decisions that they have as it relates to ruining a resource or, a safe person for them and whatnot. So there can be some regrets around that. What I've also experienced, in working with people who are diagnosed as sociopaths, what I've noticed with them in particular is that they don't like change. So especially change that they're not in control of. So, for example, I think I've shared this with you all, like when if I took time off from work, right? Because I worked at a prison. So if I took time off from work and they didn't know, like I didn't prepare them, I was going to be met with like many different type of emotions, anger, rage, accusations, that you don't care, like, this anxiety and frustration, like, where were you? And even when I quit prison, right, quit working in prison, um, there were people that, broke the rules and called me and were like, where were you? Where am I? What are you doing? And we need to figure this thing out, and you need to get back here. And why did you leave like that? So it's more like, they didn't have control over making that decision, because out in the free world, if you're dating a sociopath, they can come and go and they discard you when they please, and then they circle back when they please, and that works for them. They want to be able to be the one in control of the dynamics of the relationship. But in any relationship and where they're not in control, that usually leads to a source of anxiety and frustration. And in a place like prison, it can also lead to, decompensation, where they're just sort of spiraling out of control and may act out and may lash out. And so they do miss that, in a sense that, like, okay, you were here, you were a source of stability and structure for me, and now that you're not here, and I wasn't the one in control of when, where, and how, and why you left. I don't like that. And so I need to try to gain the upper hand, therefore breaking the rules, calling and doing things like that. And it's not to say that you don't have a rapport or things like that, in terms of, like, I didn't have a rapport. I do. But Again, and if you've seen my posts on like resource guarding and things like that, I've talked about this pretty much, there as well, and in a couple other posts, I feel like I've touched on this. But yeah, in the sense that like you were this good woman. Um, the other thing I think what you're asking, is do they know that you're a good woman? And again, I've talked about this in the resource guarding post, but there was also another post that I talked about this in, where I talked about how people are haunted, by the things they do. So, people, even people with sociopath and even people that are narcissistic, they know what they have. They know what type of person they have. Um, so they know that you are a good person. They know that you're a source of stability. Otherwise, why would they sort of latch on and like, take, suck you dry for all of your resources, right? So they know that what you had, do they appreciate it? Do they know how to treat you? Do they know how to show up? Do they know how to, will they ever learn how to be a great person in a relationship? No. And I feel like that's kind of like a discourse, like where Hollywood has steered a lot of people, because you see that in a lot of movies where you have this gangster and he like kills people on the side, but he's also a romantic lover boy. That's not real. That's not how that really works. That's not, you don't get a Romeo who quietly kills people, or who quietly does drugs, or does other bad things, and like does things like, you don't get that. You usually, and people may try to tell you that, oh, I didn't know my husband was a murderer. Yeah, you kind of did. And maybe you didn't know he was killing people, but you know that there was something amiss with him. Like he wasn't a warm, fuzzy bunny at home. He's usually a person that lacks emotion, um, lacks empathy, is entitled, and so those kind of things show up in that way. But it doesn't mean that they don't know what they have. But he's not going to romantically show up. He's not going to show up with like a bouquet of flowers and be ready to turn into the man that you need him to be 20 years later. So let that go. That is purely a myth. Um, they do remember things. I've had people that come back, um, you know, people that I counseled way back when I first got licensed, and they could like remember like things that I have said that like I have long since forgotten. And they'll come back and they'll tell me, Dr. Jones, you were right, even way back in, '07 or '08 or whatever the case may be. And they'll just want to stop in and tell me that. Um, and so they remember those things. And I'll get some of that. I wish I would have listened to you, but so I'll get some of that kind of stuff in terms of counseling. Like I wish I would have listened to you, because when I didn't listen to you, it led to like a string of bad things happening in my life. Just went downhill from there. So I do get that kind of stuff, as a counselor. But again, we're talking about people that are, wishing that they had taken more advantage of the resources that were provided to them. So I hope that helps. Thanks so much. You have a great night.